we wound up with having to move the Japanese out of a place about halfway up from the tip of New Guinea to the north of New Guinea, called Finchhaven. And Finchhaven, there's a big strait right off from Finchhaven where another island comes in. You know, west side of that island is Cape Gloucester, of the island of New Britain. On the east side of that island, the Japanese had their big stronghold of Rabaul. Mm-hmm. And they had many airplanes in Rabaul, and there's lots of stories about that. And that's where the P-38s shot down a lot of their airplanes, because they could get to Rabaul, but we couldn't with our short-range airplanes. But I was still a P-40 squadron commander. This was in December of 1943.
Okay.
And before Christmas, one of my pilots, named McClellan, shot down a Betty bomber out over Finchhaven. So anyway, I got orders to move my squadron into Finchhaven, which I did. And this, shortly after that, they decided that they would move, we were trying to move north, that they wanted to put a base on the Cape Gloucester side of New Britain, which didn't have an air base. And so they decided to move the 1st Marine Division into Cape Gloucester and take that part of the island. And they moved the 1st Marine Division into Buna, the southeast end of New Guinea, on the east side of Port Moresby. We had a flotilla down there on Christmas Day, picked up the 1st Marine Division, and sailed north to Cape Gloucester. And on the way up the side of the mountain, they had a Japanese reconnaissance airplane came down, and they were tracking this fleet moving up. And this kid McClellan drove up on that reconnaissance airplane, and he recognized the airplane as having a tail gunner. He decided not to attack it from the rear, but to fly up on the side of it and do a high side attack. So he pulled up and went up on his side to attack the reconnaissance bomber and evade the tail gunner, but the wingman didn't understand what he was doing, a kid by the name of Gabby Holder. And so he thought that he didn't see the other airplane, so he drove up the tail of it and shot it down. And he told him, he said, "Well, I didn't think you saw him, Captain." So little Gabby got his first airplane right there. Well, anyway, the next morning, because we'd shot that reconnaissance airplane down, we knew there was going to be a landing somewhere. And of course, the landing was going to be at Cape Gloucester. So I decided that I would lead the early morning mission and cover the fleet in the forepart of the morning at Cape Gloucester. So I got over the fleet between 7 and 8 o'clock in the morning, and we flew around for 3 hours, and no Japanese showed up. They put the 1st Marines ashore, and so I told them that if we don't get in the fight in the first hour on a first morning mission, I will lead the second one. So we went back, and my crew chief pulled my gun camera out because I'd fired the guns to see if they'd work. And but he failed to put another one back in. So when we took off on the next mission, I wound up without having a gun camera in my airplane. And as we got back over the fleet, we got hit by a bunch of Japanese airplanes. I chased one down and he escaped, and I pulled back up, and when I pulled back up, I run into two Japanese Oscars flying wingtip to tail to wingtip, about like this. And as I pulled up in them, it's hard to imagine sometimes how far you have to lead an airplane when it's flying 300 miles an hour to shoot it down. But anyway, I pulled around and I pulled up and put my gun sight in front of the lead airplane, pulled the trigger, and the rear airplane blew up. I never told anyone that. Well, my wingman called me and he says, "Nice shooting, Cyclone." And I got my aim back up in front of the lead airplane, shot it down. So I had two airplanes right then to my credit, and just like that. And so anyway, the fight was going on. We must have had, I don't know, 60, 70, 80 airplanes. And my squadron's up in the middle of this dogfight. And so I started shooting at airplanes. I shot at one coming up at me. I could see my bullets hitting his engine. And then I pulled out, and I got another one on the tail of a P-40, and I shot him off. And the fight lasted, and I made about 14 passes, and I think I shot down about 6, maybe 7 airplanes.
Wow.
And I run out of ammunition,
and none of it on film.
None of it on film. So anyway, I got credit for the first 2, but I don't get credit for any of the other because I had no film. So anyway, and then the next day, we lost 2 P-38 pilots out south of New Britain, and we sent a PBY, Army Air Corps PBY, out to look for these 2 downed pilots. And I took my squadron out to cover this PBY while it was searching for the pilots. And as it was searching, I made a swing up near a ball, and I run across another PBY, completely black, no markings, no American markings on it whatsoever. And I was brandy leader. I was told to flight, one of my pilots, he wanted to go shoot it down. He said, "That's a Japanese PBY. I said, "No, you can't tell." I said, "I'm going to go down and fly underneath it and see if he's got any markings underneath his wings, because you weren't allowed to fly an airplane in a combat zone without markings on it." And so when I flew underneath him, why, the waist gunner shot at me, but he shot over me. And so I pulled up, turned around, and shot the left engine off of it. There were 2 guys in the nose of it, and I had some bullets go through the nose. One guy got hit right in the thigh like that. Another guy got hit by a bullet, burned both wrists by the Americans. And it was the airplane called me right after that. Said, "Brandy leader, I'm Gardenia 1. You just shot me down." So I called Moko and told him to come on up and inspect this airplane. It looked like a Japanese to me, but I said, keep your finger on the mic button, and if it's the wrong one, we'll sink him. And he got up and landed, and it was a Navy airplane. And so anyway, we offloaded the wounded and the other crew onto the Army Catalina, and I flew back to get the ambulances ready to take care of the wounded people. So when Moko got home, why, everything was taken care of.
Why were there no markings on the aircraft?
Well, you have to ask the Navy. Anyway, I have to report this to my general. So I called General Whitehead and told him I'd shot down this Catalina, and he said it was an Army or Navy. I said it was Navy. He said, serves 'em right. That's the last I ever heard of it.
They were up doing reconnaissance, obviously.
Well, they were out doing, but they decided that when they flew over the Japanese spotlight would pick them up and tell who they were by the markings. So they painted out the marking. But
They weren't counting on you guys.
they wasn't counting on fighters, friendly fighters shooting them down.
Did you ever meet the, not to be ghoulish, but did you ever meet personally any of the fellows that you shot?
The two guys that went to the hospital, I took a whole bunch of ice cream up there and served them all ice cream.
What did they say?
Oh, I don't know. They probably didn't like me.